You can go to our website, nhptv.org/outlook, for a link to the IRS webpage. Next on New Hampshire Outlook, details of legislation that could impact how people are charged with marijuana possession. One of the most unexpected and contentious issues at the State House this session has been a proposal to reduce the penalty for possession of small amounts of marijuana. The bill has passed the House, but faces a tough fight in the Senate and from the governor. Outlook's Richard Ager has more on the impact of House Bill 1623.
Can you watch it at the school online?
Sam Perret is an honors student in business administration at Southern New Hampshire University. Active in the Debate Society, he has also been vice president of student government and started a TV club that does campus programming.
Hello, I'm Sam Perret. This is SNU News for you.
But at the end of his freshman year, Sam's education nearly came to a halt.
2 summers ago, I had lost my driver's license, being under 20, and it was first speeding ticket. And
Sam didn't do the necessary paperwork and was caught driving with a suspended license.
I got pulled over by the Amherst police, and they had me arrested and went through my car and found it was an empty wooden box, which they could smell residue of marijuana, and so they sent it into the lab.
The state forensic lab found 0.03 grams, or about 1,000th of an ounce, of marijuana residue, essentially plant dust.
I don't feel it was just at all. In fact, I think it was hugely exaggerated. I paid, over $500 at the court, and then it's been, I lost all my FAFSA funding, and so it's been...
Your student loans.
Correct.
And how much had you been relying on those?
Thousands of dollars. Yeah.
So how did you manage to stay here in college?
Well, with the support of my family and friends, they helped pitch in and support me.
With a family ready to step in, Sam was one of the fortunate ones. Under a 1998 federal law, students cannot receive and must pay back their federal student aid following a drug conviction. Nationwide, the latest figures show, as of 2006, nearly 200,000 students have lost their aid so far, including 541 in New Hampshire. Representative Jeff Fonda says that's wrong, and he wrote a bill to change it.
As a student and a college student in the legislature, I thought it would be incumbent upon me to introduce a bill that sort of reflected an issue that affects a lot of my peers, and also sort of reflected a way where we could sort of reshape our policy in a rational way.
Under current state law, possession of a small amount of marijuana is a misdemeanor and can result in penalties up to a year in jail, a $2,000 fine, and a criminal record. Most first offenders get a much smaller fine and no jail time. House Bill 1623 would make possession of a quarter ounce of marijuana a violation instead of a misdemeanor and impose a $200 fine with no criminal record. To pass the House, it needed Republican support, and got it.
Republicans, you have law and order Republicans, and you have Republicans who are more libertarian leaning, and in many cases they inhabit the same body. So in this case, I think you had a lot of Republicans that really looked at the issue. There were 40 Republicans that voted in favor of the bill because they realized that, you know what, maybe it doesn't make sense for us to be locking up somebody in prison for up to a year just for possessing less than a quarter of an ounce of marijuana.
The hearings drew testimony from law enforcement officials on both sides of the issue. Representative John Thole opposed the bill, fearing unintended consequences.
And they tend to think, well, possession, it's only going to be a $200 fine, no big deal, but then they get stopped in a car with it, now it's a misdemeanor. They give some to a friend and somebody sees them, returns them in, now it's a felony.
After debate, members in the full House voted by a large margin to reject the Criminal Justice Committee recommendation and pass House Bill 1623.
So many of them are parents and grandparents, and they thought about, gosh, what if it's my kid who gets busted for something that so many young people experiment with? What makes sense in terms of a penalty for this? And they looked at the laws that were on the books, looked at the laws on the books in other states. They reached the conclusion that this conversation should move forward and not end on the House floor.
This is a copy of the statute.
Judge Ed Kelly administers the state's district courts where the marijuana cases are heard. He says adding federal penalties to state law makes a judge's task more difficult.
I really think the focus here is on whether or not the penalty fits that offense. And I think there's some discomfort on the part of many, I'm sure in the legislature, I think in the law enforcement community as well, whether or not the current penalty is too severe. Again, the peripheral penalty.
Well, what do you think among judges? I mean, you talk to, obviously, those who administer the law. Do you hear that discomfort, that the consequences are greater than really wished for?
I think if there's a level of discomfort, and this is not something that we really talk about because we have no control over it, it might have to do with other consequences. But again, from our point of view, whatever the law requires, we follow.
The bill's passage got a quick reaction from the governor.
Well, one, I don't think it's going to pass the Senate either. So, and if it did, I would veto it. I think it sends exactly the wrong message.
And it got a similar reaction from the Senate Majority Leader.
I think it sends a wrong message to our young people and really to our state, generally speaking. We're talking about contraband marijuana, and what we're assigning to it is the functional equivalent of a parking ticket fine.
I think it's a little premature to be talking about a veto now. This is something that, I mean, obviously there is some very, very good discussion that the Senate needs to look at in terms of what happened in the House.
There is much talk of sending the right message. But when a third of all Americans say they have used marijuana, and polls show a growing number in favor of legalization, there seems little consensus on what that message is.
What kind of message do you mean?
We did an informal survey at UNH to see if young people were aware of the law.
Honestly, I could list over 200 names of people that I know personally who have done it in the past and haven't thought it was a big deal.
I don't smoke weed, but
we won't ask you anything personal. It's just
a lot of people here do.
Do you know what the penalty is for possession of marijuana in New Hampshire?
No, I don't. I'm not quite sure, but I know it is pretty severe.
I heard something about some kind of possession of something being lowered. I'm not sure what it is. I would guess a couple years.
Go to jail, right?
I think that's
jail.
What I've heard.
Jail time. It's a felony.
Yeah, it's not.
I think pretty much people who are informed know what smoking pot does and make their own decisions, regardless of how illegal it is, what they want to do personally.
As Milton Friedman said, we have to judge a policy by its outcome, not by its intent. And if the intent of our drug laws are to reduce the use of drugs, in the case of marijuana, it is not working.
How do you now feel about marijuana itself? Do you favor its usage, its legalization? Do you use it?
I mean, I have the closet smoke, and I think it's that important for people to kind of come to this to make give a pair of shirt I have. I think a lot of people are scared of it. I think it's get a lot of bad people. And I think it does people think, and it's like just anything in life. There's a line, and you need to be balanced.
Second Penrett will graduate with honors in May. For New Hampshire Outlook, I'm Richard Ager.
11 states have already decriminalized possession of small amounts of marijuana. While some worry about the message a change in the law will send to young people, a study done by the National Academy of Sciences found there is little evidence decriminalization of marijuana leads to a substantial increase in its use.